All right, let's jump straight into this explainer, because today we are unpacking a highly unique, deeply spiritual framework for understanding human illness. We're looking at a perspective that steps completely outside the bounds of conventional modern medicine and instead asks us to view the human body through an entirely spiritual lens. To remain completely objective here, we're focusing specifically on the claims made in the text, The True Relationship Between the Mind and Body, authored by Ryuho Okawa. And specifically, we're zeroing in on Chapter 2, which proposes that our physical health is intimately entwined with spiritual phenomena, negative thoughts, and even past life karma. We're essentially going to map out the architecture of this specific worldview to see exactly how it redefines what it really means to be sick. So we'll be breaking this down into 6 key parts. First, the mind-body connection, then skin and relationships, individuality versus illness, overcoming the inferiority complex, spirits and infectious diseases, and finally, the concept of life as a workbook. Let's get into it. Section 1. The mind-body connection, spiritual root causes. Okay, so before we can understand specific ailments, we have to know how this text believes the body actually operates on a spiritual level. The whole foundation of Okawa's argument rests on this concept of the astral body. Think of it almost like a spiritual blueprint that perfectly overlaps your physical form. The philosophy posits that if you hold on to a constantly negative self-image, like if you wake up every single day thinking, I'm sick, I'm unlucky, I'm just destined to suffer, well, that doesn't just put you in a bad mood. It literally damages this astral body. And once that astral body is fractured by negative thought patterns, those spiritual cracks eventually trickle down and manifest as very real, very physical diseases. Section 2. Skin and relationships, looking specifically at atopic dermatitis. Applying that logic we just talked about, how does a damaged astral body show up on the surface of our skin? Well, the author asks us to look at the skin metaphorically. In this framework, your skin isn't just an organ, It's the ultimate literal and spiritual barrier. It's the absolute boundary line separating your internal self, your soul, from the external world and everyone in it. So the crucial takeaway here is that the text links skin inflammation to a profound feeling of rejection. When a child, for instance, suffers from severe dermatitis, the author suggests examining their close relationships and family dynamics. It implies a disconnect between the inside and outside, basically a deep-seated fear of being harmed by others or a powerful rejection of their external environment. Think about a time you felt super defensive. In this worldview, the skin actually flares up as a physical manifestation of his soul trying to build a literal wall against perceived external threats. Section 3. Individuality, not illness. Reevaluating neurodivergence. Now, this is where the source drastically departs from modern medical definitions, particularly regarding conditions like autism and Asperger syndrome. It completely flips the conventional script. While modern medicine generally classifies these as developmental disorders that might require therapy or treatment, this spiritual framework absolutely rejects the label of illness. Instead, Okawa reframes these conditions as signs of brilliant, world-changing potential. The text points out that historical figures who dramatically shifted the course of humanity, like Albert Einstein, often fit this exact behavioral profile. So from this perspective, refusing to conform to societal norms isn't a deficit at all. It's actually a marker of high intellect and intense individuality. And the text takes this even a step further. It suggests that labeling these unique traits as a disability is just a really flawed, limited human perspective. From a higher spiritual vantage point, the author describes some of these individuals as angels of light. These are souls said to possess extreme purity and an almost rigid, uncompromising sense of justice. So what we might perceive as social difficulties actually stem from a natural spiritual disposition to fiercely fight evil and hypocrisy. It basically makes it incredibly hard for them to just blend into the murky gray areas of everyday human society. Section 4. Overcoming the inferiority complex, looking specifically at stuttering. While modern therapy might focus on motor mechanics or neurology to address stuttering, this worldview looks at speech purely through a psychological and confidence-based lens. In this framework, stuttering often stems from an intense, underlying inferiority complex. The author describes it as having extreme timidity, or a small spirit. The physical block in speech is actually viewed as a manifestation of a profound fear. It's the fear of exposing your true self to the judgment of others. It's literally the body's way of executing a subconscious desire to just hide from public view and avoid interaction altogether. So, how do you cure a small spirit? Well, the author prescribes a very specific,
action-oriented solution. First, you have to recognize that underlying fear. Second, and this is absolutely key, the individual has to build undeniable confidence by developing a highly specialized skill or an area of expertise. Finally, they literally have to force themselves into situations where they must speak about that specific strength. By overriding the fear of judgment with the absolute certainty of their expertise, the individual can break that spiritual barrier and consequently overcome the physical speech barrier.
Section 5. Spirits and Infectious Diseases, the case of influenza. We're moving into some deeply mystical territory now because the text offers a highly unconventional explanation for something we all experience, the spread of infectious diseases. The author challenges the purely biological explanations of viral spread by posing a pretty thought-provoking question. He asks, if viruses and bacteria exist all year long, why do epidemics like influenza suddenly spike so violently when the weather turns cold? The text suggests that while the biological virus obviously exists, a supernatural catalyst is actually required to trigger such rapid, widespread transmission. So, according to this worldview, where does that supernatural catalyst come from? The animal kingdom. Specifically, the text claims it's the collective, wandering spirits of insects that die en masse as the autumn cold sets in. Because these insects die rapidly and collectively, their unpassed spirits form dense spiritual clouds. These insect spirits then attach themselves to airborne viruses. The virus is merely acting as a physical vehicle. The rapid spread of the flu is actually a form of mass spiritual possession by these wandering insect spirits that are drawn to negative spiritual thoughts. It is definitely a wildly different way to view flu season, to say the least.
Section 6. Life as a Workbook, looking at intractable diseases.
When a condition seemingly has no cure, like severe rheumatism, how does this paradigm explain the suffering? The philosophy posits that these severe chronic illnesses are deeply tied to a soul's karma, sometimes carrying over from past lives, or they're triggered by deep-rooted spiritual possession. And here is where the text issues a pretty stark warning. It claims that relying purely on chemical treatments to suppress these symptoms might be entirely missing the point. If the root cause is spiritual, suppressing it medically will merely block that specific physical exit, which just forces the negative spiritual energy to manifest later as an entirely new physical disease. Rather than viewing chronic illness or severe disability as just some random tragedy, the author impartially presents it as a designated trial. The text famously states, "Life is one volume of a workbook." In this view, a soul actually chooses or accepts these severe physical limitations before birth. It's seen as an advanced, highly difficult homework assignment meant to violently polish and elevate the soul through the endurance of suffering. And this isn't just a trial for the sick individual either. It's for their entire family. By caring for the severely ill or by enduring the illness oneself without bitterness, individuals are given a rigorous but absolutely necessary opportunity to practice unconditional giving love. The text views these moments of extreme medical despair as the very catalysts required for a soul to make a profound religious and spiritual leap. We've covered a lot of ground today, exploring a framework that basically strips away the microscope and replaces it with a spiritual lens. Whether you view these concepts as literal truths or as metaphorical philosophy, it's undeniably a wildly different way to view human health. It leaves us to wonder just how much power our mindset, our hidden fears, and our spiritual state truly hold over our physical reality. If your physical body is just a canvas for your soul, what is your body trying to teach you today?